Hello and welcome to another Drive-In Double Feature. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about two movies every week, every Tuesday and Thursday. And today we're going to be talking about 1964's Mothra versus Godzilla, directed by Ishiro Honda, or Inoshiro Honda, according to the English version, because they, for whatever reason, they cannot spell this man's name correctly on any English version. Why is that, Nathan?
Why did they just like, oh, I'm going to throw an N in here? Like, oh, yeah, there's definitely an N in the middle of his name. That's so weird.
I don't understand. I mean, this is the fourth movie that's been released, and they cannot get this man's correctly. They can't do it.
Well, heck, they couldn't even get Mothra's name correctly.
The Thing, yes. Yeah. Mothra was known as The Thing in the United States version, mostly just because to keep up that mysterious vibe. And also, to all the information that you and I are pulling. I know you watched the Big Action Bill video for Mothra versus Godzilla. We're going to be pulling information from that. I also read the book by David Klatt from the Godzilla book, and I also listened to the audio commentary for Mothra versus Godzilla on the English version from the audio commentary by Steve Reifel and Ed Godzinski. Mm-hmm. We talked about Mothra on the last one. You all know what Mothra is, giant flying moth, but for whatever reason, I guess they wanted you to forget that Mothra was released in America. I mean, because it's not the first time Mothra was in America, but they decided to put Godzilla fighting like this big giant block looking thing, and there's these tentacles sticking out of it in the poster, and they're like, Godzilla versus the Thing. What is the Thing? You'll have to watch the movie to find out, despite it's Mothra.
Yeah, I guess maybe because Mothra wasn't as popular as Godzilla in the States, and they were a little scared to gamble on that. But I mean, still, like, it would have been fine. I bet you it would have been perfectly fine if it was Godzilla versus Mothra here.
Yeah, so that is one of the reasons why, because Mothra was a big success in Japan. In fact, so much so that it actually sold as much tickets as the original Godzilla movie. Not as much as King Kong versus Godzilla, but almost on par with the original Godzilla movie.
Wow.
So this was actually another marquee matchup. I mean, the first one was kind of like an East meets West type of attack with King Kong versus Godzilla, but this one was kind of like Toho. They had a bankable star with Mothra, and they had a bankable star with Godzilla. Why not put them together?
Yeah, it makes sense, you know. They realized the matchups work, so we'll just keep going with it. And hey, I mean, it's a great matchup. I mean, you love Godzilla. Mothra is probably one of the best like side monster movies that we've talked about. It's definitely like my favorite. So I mean, I was excited for this going in. Yeah,
and it has a lot of the same tones a little bit from past movies. It's not as fantastical as Mothra, but it's not as comedic as King Kong versus Godzilla, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. It plays like that median very well. Like it feels like the way a team up movie should be. It takes the tones of kind of both different worlds and meshes them together in a very nice way. Yeah, and I can really appreciate that. There's like so there's always returning actors playing different characters, but the fairies actually do show up again, and it's the Peanuts returning and all that. I guess that's another thing you'd say is returning from Godzilla. We have the same kind of cast from those movies showing up, so there's familiarity there as well.
We also have Kenji Sahara, who also returns from Rodan and King Kong versus Godzilla. We also have Akira Takarada from the original Godzilla, the original protagonist, coming back, and he's a protagonist again. Is he the same character? No. Why would he do that?
But they would never do that.
Well, because they even get the scientist from Mothra, and he's playing a scientist in this movie too, but he's not the same guy. So I'm like, why wouldn't they just get him again?
Yeah, I wonder what it is. I wonder if they just wanted these movies to kind of exist in their own world, and you didn't really need context from the other movies. Because, I mean, the way Godzilla appears in this one is very different, right? Like, than anything before. Um, but the world still knows who these characters are, right? Like, they still know who Mothra is. They know who Godzilla is. So obviously they've been around. So I don't know.
I guess my theory to that is that maybe they're trying to keep it more worldly and like maybe like, oh, well, you don't want to pay attention to the human peoples. You just want to put full focus on Godzilla. Who cares who's playing these people? So
even though that's like more than half of these movies.
Yeah, I know. I will say I didn't like the human elements of this one as much as I did Mothra.
No, yeah, Mothra definitely had a stronger cast, and it's definitely a very similar thing because it's the same deal with like a news, an evil corporation. It's more of a focus on, I feel like Mothra was more like evil corporations from other countries, and this one was more evil corporations from within the country.
Which they kind of did that already with King Kong versus Godzilla.
It's true. They're kind of repeating a little bit, but yeah, I mean, the cast isn't bad here, though. I don't mind them. They're just not as standout. The villains don't stand out as much as Mothra, but I think they're still, they're cool enough. I like them.
Speaking of that, so one thing I wanted to bring up that which coming through in my research now is that there was actually a revised ending or an alternate ending to Mothra.
Okay.
With Jerry Ito, the original villain of Mothra, where because remember I kind of had said like I wish he had been like attacked maybe by Mothra, or maybe like Mothra might have been helped make his demise, but apparently that is what happened. There was an alternate ending where his character was on a volcano, and then Mothra would come swooping in and knock him into a volcano and die.
Why did they cut this out?
I don't know. So how they did this scene was they shot it apparently, and they actually got a dummy and threw it into a volcano, and apparently somebody saw this event happening, and they saw what they thought to be a lifeless body in a volcano, and so they had to like go in and retrieve what they thought was a suicide victim, and it turned out to be a dummy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, I mean, like, I can only imagine. I'd probably react the same way if I saw, like a dummy burning alive in a volcano. I'd be like, oh, God, somebody died. I guess I read about that, too, and Ishiro Honda reprimanded the team that did this.
Yeah, with justifiably so, I will say. But
yeah. I do like the way the villain does go out in this. I mean, they go out pretty early in this movie, surprisingly.
In a very violent way for these movies.
Yeah, God, I watched a YouTube video about this, but even before then, I remember like looking, I was watching, and then like they beat the crap out of each other and super violent, super bloody, and I was like, it just took me back because these movies become more and more, tailored towards like a younger family audience. That's not a family scene. That was bloody.
Yeah, he punches the guy in the nose, and he starts bleeding all over the place, and then thinking he's knocked out, this guy pulls out a gun, and while he has his head turned, shoots the guy in the back of the head, and then he just starts bleeding from his forehead.
Yeah, and then and it's crazy, and then he ends up dying in a collapsed building because he decides to save money instead of running away from Godzilla. Which is a fitting end. It's a fun end, but that the villains are out. And then it's just monsters. That's pretty much where the movie goes.
Yeah, and that's why I said I wasn't as invested into the human element as this one. It pretty much just ends like when the monsters show up, and that's. But I guess that maybe is intentional. So that way there's like, all right, we got that plot line taken care of. We can dig into this a little bit. But,
yeah, exactly. It makes sense.
But I do want to go back and talk about the start of this movie. And like you said, they find a giant egg that washes up on the shore. And because it was in the water, these fishermen are like, oh, that belongs to us. And we sold it to this corporation.
Like it works that way.
Yeah, apparently everything in the water belongs to belongs to those fishermen.
Yeah, and then they sold it for like an insane, like weird number,
One,
like an odd number.
1.2 million yen.
Yeah, yep. It was because they said it was the size of like so many chicken eggs, and you can buy like a chicken egg for super cheap. So
Well,
they
he's like,
multiply.
yeah, he's like, well, this is about the size of so-and-so amount of eggs. You can buy eggs for 80 yen a piece. So if you just add all those together, then you get all.
Yeah, it's so funny because this villain, there are moments of greatness because, you know, we follow like a reporter and a photographer, and the photographer goes to take a picture of him and he blows smoke right at the camera. That was a pretty fun moment.
And he's like, oh, let me know how that picture turns out.
Yeah, exactly. And then they plan on making a theme park out of this egg, which is so weird.
And I do think it's funny how people just casually are just going up and touching the egg and scraping it and all that. But originally how the scene was supposed to start was it was supposed to pick up like right where King Kong versus Godzilla left off, and Godzilla's dead body was supposed to wash up onto the shore. Yeah. And the video that you and I watched, it was a really graphic image.
I was going to ask you, did you see that concept art?
Yes, I did. Where Godzilla's intestines just falling out of his body.
Yeah, like, who drew that? They were not going to do that to Godzilla.
I don't know how they could have gone from there. I mean, I guess the whole point was Godzilla would have came back to life, maybe, but who knows? But I'm glad to say they changed that direction.
Yeah, but he has a really way of entering the movie still, though. Like, I don't know if it's jumping ahead a little bit, but like the way he hops into the movie is very weird because he just pops out from underground. He's like underground and like there's radioactivity and he just, oh, I'm here, I'm out.
Well, it does make sense in the context because they were draining the ocean a little bit and they were feeding it back into this body of water. So I kind of took it away as Godzilla was kind of under the water and then the ground level, and then he just kind of got buried by all that dirt from there. But
makes sense.
But yeah, I thought it was actually a pretty memorable opening. He always has like a really big way of appearing on the screen. I mean, the last time he broke out of this giant block of ice, and now he's literally coming from the bottom of the earth. Yeah,
it's literally just raising from the ground. And I love the scenes they've done here. Like these movies, at least here, the special effects work has like gotten insanely good, like absolutely insane. There's some really notable cool scenes. Going back to the Mothra plot line, the stuff they did with the fairies, the peanuts, I loved it. When I watched it the first time, it added like so much whimsy because it looked like instead of blue screening them in, they built like actual furniture, huge sets with big furniture so they could act in front of like giant versions of couches and stuff. So it looked like they were really there. Awesome. Yeah. Great work.
And even the camera work too, where they superimpose the fairies into each scene to look like they were there. I mean, is it as impressive as technology today? No, but at the time it was a technical marvel that they were able to do something like that.
Yeah, looking into the context of its time, it's really cool to look at because they also superimpose Godzilla in, and it's a little blurry, but I still think it's cool.
Yeah, and so how they got that idea was Honda was actually a big fan of Disney movies as well. One of his goals was he was hoping that Disney would actually remake Mothra at some point, which is kind of funny. But at the same time, that doesn't seem too far out because we even said while we were watching it that it felt like a Disney movie. So I do get that in some way. But Tsuburaya, the special effects wizard, he actually went to Disney and did like a little tour of it, and and that was one of the pieces of technology that Disney had, and he was able to talk Toho into getting something like that. And it was such a sophisticated piece of equipment. It was like only 2 movie studios in the world had that piece of equipment.
Isn't that crazy? He had the power to get that.
He had the pull to do that. I mean, I guess at a certain point when you knock it out of the park like 4 times, they're like, okay, I guess we got to give you something. Like,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, and it was to great effect. There's some really, really good stuff. So how do you feel about the Godzilla suit in this one? It's a little different in this one.
I like it. I like it a
You
lot.
like it?
It's not. I don't. So I don't know if it's my favorite, but
Yeah.
because there's going to be some later ones where I know I like the designs of those. So I think what we're going to have to do is at the end of the movie, or we may have to do like a little like comparison, like a Godzilla suit off.
Yeah. That's what I want to do because I need to get a look at them again. My problem with this one, so I like it. I really like the eyebrows on it. It gives him like a really angry, furious look. But it's a weird critique. I don't like his mouth. His mouth is very floppy in this one. Like he'll move, he'll dance around, he'll crash into things, and his mouth just kind of like hangs there. It doesn't have a lot of like, there's not much going on with it. Just a little too floppy for me. But otherwise,
Right.
I think it's a really solid look.
Yeah, and there was like, and so I do understand that critique where because there is like even his upper jaw like didn't seem it was like that well attached to his face. Like even his
Yeah.
upper jaw was kind of flopping around a little bit. It looked like the skin wasn't attached.
Hmm.
But at the same time, apparently that was not intentional because the scene of course there's the big giant castle that Godzilla destroys,
Hmm.
and they built another replica of the castle, and Godzilla was supposed to destroy it, and actually took two takes because on the first take they actually built the castle so well that it didn't come down, and Godzilla just crashed face first into it. And uh, Nakajima, the suit actor, was kind of just like, oh yeah, like he tried really hard because they showed one of the takes
Hmm.
in there, and they kind of tried to play it off like, oh yeah, like I meant to do that type of thing, and
Hmm.
but they had to reshoot it, and they did eventually get the castle down. But because he landed face first, and that it kind of dislodged the jaw a little bit, so that's why the jaw was kind of flopping around a little bit. So,
That makes sense.
but the face is really good. Like my biggest critique of the King Kong versus Godzilla face is because when you do like that head on shot, like profile wise, the suit looked great, but when he had it head on, it was just like his eyes looked really close together. He had kind of like a real dopey looking face. And
Mhm.
that was my critique against him. This one, I mean, he's a villain. He's a full-on villain in this one. Like they make it very clear that Godzilla is the bad guy in this one. And
Yeah.
he's got the face of a villain.
Yes, he does. They do zoom ins on his face and he just looks like he's ready to wreak havoc. But I found interesting. I actually found Godzilla to be a little more sympathetic in this one. I know he's going to be a hero soon, but like as far as like the human destruction, it's very bumbling. He destroys that castle, but he literally just trips into it. It's actually quite comical. He like falls down and kind of lands into it. All the destruction and stuff doesn't seem to be too like harmful. Like I want to kill people. I'm just here to destroy. It's definitely kind of like I'm bumbling around and Mothra is going to attack me and I have to defend myself.
Yeah, and that was kind of Honda's philosophy too. I mean, kind of going back to one of his original views of Godzilla as a character is that he wanted to see him as more of a force of nature and not so much of this mindless killing machine.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what he is. He's not intentionally destroying everything. It's just it gets in his way and it breaks apart type of thing. Like there's one
Hmm.
scene where his tail gets caught in the one of the towers, and the
Yeah.
whole tower just collapses because he yanks his tail back.
Yeah, exactly. I really like that he uses his tail more than ever in this one. Like there's like a dome he has to destroy and he just breaks it open with his tail. Really, Nakajima knocks it out of the park again as Godzilla. I think this is probably the best he's ever done as Godzilla. He does like little like victory dances that aren't like overly cheesy like clips I've seen from later movies. This is very much a Godzilla like just having a victory, kind of just doing really cool movements. I liked it.
Yeah, and one thing I was reading from David Klatt's book is that um, Nakajima, it was a total team player during a lot of these movies, and when they were building these suits, this one in particular, because they said like this one where he was able to be the most mobile and he was able to do a lot more with the suit, and that's because when they were building the suit, he's very involved in the process. So like they'll start building the piece, they'll give it to him and he'll kind of move around in it to make sure, what areas are not working and whatever. So it was kind of form fitted to him to make it like a perfect fit. But
That's good.
still at the same time, the suit did weigh over 200 pounds. And by the end of filming, he lost over 20 pounds.
Wow. Holy crap. And do you think that the suit catching on fire did anything for that?
Yes, probably so.
Wow.
What a scene.
Yeah, when I saw that, like, the first time, it looked so real. I was like, holy crap, that he really did catch on fire. Like, it was a sight to behold. It's really cool.
Right. So there is the scene where Godzilla's head catches on fire from all these missile strikes, but Nakajima was not in danger because his head is kind of like right in the middle of the neckline of Godzilla, and his actual human head is not where Godzilla's head is. So
Gotcha.
He was fine during. In fact, there's actually one scene. There's a blooper in the movie too, where how Nakajima is able to see is that there's little holes cut into Godzilla's neck, and there's one scene where he's fighting some Mothra larvas, and you could see like his head poking through one of the holes a little bit. So
Nice.
it's very clearly, but that's just that comes with the territory, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to happen with these movies. It's hard to catch everything. And I mean, now where these movies get so cleaned up, it's easier to spot these things rather than when they were like film grainy, home video. You weren't really noticing a lot of stuff like that.
No, and in fact, this movie is sort of seen as the golden age of these movies, like kaiju movies.
Gotcha. Is it like, are you like the start, the middle of it, or like the end of it?
It's kind of like the gold standard. Like this one's
Gotcha.
always highly regarded as the best Godzilla sequel.
Really?
And
Okay.
and the reason why that is because everybody that had a hand in Godzilla, they were kind of just firing on all cylinders. Like you get Honda back, the original director, you get the original composer to come back, you get Tsuburaya, the effects wizard, the best suit designers, and best miniature makers, that sort of thing. So it's just kind of like you got like your A team working on this movie, and there's a lot of stuff in here which it may not, like we said, it may not seem impressive now, but it was really impressive for the time. Like some of the fight choreography that was in there, where Godzilla is able to move around a lot more. Like Godzilla able to shoot his atomic breath while his head was moving instead of from like a stationary way. That was seen as like a really big deal. And listening to the commentary for the English one, they just said like this is a masterpiece in terms of kaiju fighting.
Yeah, I mean, the fighting is really great. I mean, I'm really loving that we're getting a chance to go through these movies in a chronological order. Whereas like maybe 20 years ago, that was a little bit harder. It was like what I could get my hands on. And nowadays we can watch these movies in this order. And I think it really, you gain that appreciation how every movie at least so far, has gained something along the way. They really are, as far as special effects, fighting and stuff, they are getting better and better, and it's becoming more state of the art. And I feel like when I get to the end of these, I'm going to look back a little more fondly on some of these once I have the full context. So I really love that we get to do that.
Oh, no, I agree. And I mean, like right now, especially, so this is 1964, so this is 10 years from the original movie. Just think how far we came from that original movie. I mean, Godzilla could barely move in those movies where they actually had to shoot the scenes like so little at a time just because of how difficult it was to move in that suit. But now it's like you can do like these really complicated scenes where Godzilla's on the ground thrashing around, or they do like these incredible close-ups of Godzilla's face where you can kind of get like that Godzilla point of view when Mothra's doing like an aerial attack. Really cool, exciting stuff in here that I really appreciate a lot more now, having gone through this chronologically.
Yeah, for sure. And God, the stuff that they do in this kaiju fight, I love it. I love the Mothra section where it is actually Mothra fighting him, where I don't know why, it just brought out this sense of joy when I saw Mothra pick up Godzilla by the tail and drag him. I thought that was awesome to see.
Yeah, Mothra is a force to be reckoned with in this movie.
You don't mess with her babies. That's all I got out of this.
Yeah, and Mothra has a lot of, does her signature like hurricane wind attack, and she also does another one where she does like a poison powder where she just, like Godzilla is just lying on the ground and just thrashing, and Mothra is just spraying this poison powder all over him.
Yeah. Yeah, Godzilla is so weird in this one because like I felt like most of the fight he was just getting his ass kicked. That he's not doing a lot of winning in this fight really.
All right, so should I go into my rant now?
Yeah, go ahead and rant. What's up?
So, like King Kong versus Godzilla, I haven't seen this movie very much, and the reason for it is because Mothra wins.
Yes, and it is a little more definitive than King Kong versus Godzilla. This is very Godzilla loses.
And I could see why now. I have avoided this movie for so long, and because it was getting me a little worked up again watching this movie. I'm an adult male, but yes, I have my sides. I pick them.
I get it. It's okay.
I'm still full team Godzilla here, and this is me stepping away from being like critical lens and all that. This is me being fanboy here. Like I was really upset. I was still like so annoyed about how little offense Godzilla got.
Yeah, Godzilla gets like nothing. So like Mothra, right? Her egg cracks and it's two larvae. And the two larvae take down Godzilla. What I can't believe. And like a Big Action Bill is the YouTuber that I at least watched before this. He talked about it being like the most frustrating part of the movie. And it really is because Godzilla just kind of takes it. The two larvae just shoot string at him and string him up. And he just stands there like, oh, I can't do anything. What am I doing?
Well, yeah, because Godzilla... They show his breath is so powerful that he's able to melt a boulder, but these larvae are able to hide behind boulders and not get melted. I don't know, and the other thing too is, so I mean, these are babies, these are newborns. He loses the newborns, and then even Mothra, like the full-grown Mothra. They even specified before this fight began, they're like, oh, this Mothra is about to die. This Mothra is sick. It's not going to live for very long. So Godzilla can barely beat up an old Mothra that's on its like last leg. And it still can't, and it's still barely won. It only won because he got like one lucky shot in, and then the thing just started dying. And then these newborns show up, and then it's just like, he kind of gets in a little offense where he's whipping it with his tail, but it's almost right away. It's just, oh, it's over.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the larvae show up, he like blocks the town with fire, but they just kind of go around it, and it ends. He gets strung up, he falls in the ocean, and it's like, all right, we're done here. He lost. It's over. It's definitely a little interesting. I do like wish there was a little bit more back and forth, just a little bit of fighting.
I know. So that's why even watching it now, don't get me wrong, I like the movie a lot.
Oh yeah, it's great.
But it's still incredibly frustrating as a fan to watch.
Yeah, it makes sense. It doesn't feel fair, especially you're right. You bring up a good point with Mothra being dead, and this is a little bit of an aside, but I still find this weird, the logic behind this. So the island Mothra is from is being destroyed by Japan through nuclear testing. But the main cast decide to go to the island and convince the locals and Mothra that, hey, you can help us. And at first, like, no, you're destroying our land. Why would he help you? And they're like, hey, even bad guys don't deserve to die. You should help us. It's a really weird logical thing. And Mothra is like, okay, I guess you're right.
Right. And that was kind of added in at the last minute because Sekizawa, the screenwriter for this movie, didn't have that in the original screenplay. That was not really a plot point. So reading David Klatt's book, Honda is a real big humanist. He loves like that humanist element there in these movies, and he tries to relate it back to humans. So when you have Mothra, who's this godlike monster that's a protector of this island, they see it as a god. They try to relate back to like, oh, well, if you're God, then you need to kind of take care of us humans, add like that human element to it. So that was kind of added in at the last minute. And also too, Honda really hated how Infant Island looked in this movie because in the first movie, Infant Island, it's like this real vibrant, colorful area. It's got these lush trees and everything. And it's just this one, it's so dingy and just it looks so bleak. There's just these little rocks and dirt all over the place. And
it really does. Yeah, it looks very different.
yeah, and the reason for that is because they didn't have the budget to shoot the nicer set of Infant Island. So that's why that one looks like that. And Honda was very displeased about how it turned out. But, you know, he's a company man. He just does what he wants. He does what they tell him to do.
Yeah. Honestly, it sounds like Honda has a lot of regrets after some of these movies.
Yeah, and it's just going to get worse for him, unfortunately. But but you know, he does work with what he has, and I think he still is able to turn in a great job. But did you notice? And I know they mentioned it in the YouTube video, but did you notice the little turtle that was in the movie?
I did not because I watched the video I watched the regular version and the English version, and I was looking at that turtle, and yeah, it moves. I didn't notice it the first time because it's in the background. I love that these like movies have such weird lore to them. Like in Japan, what was it, a keychain they had of this skeleton turtle in the background?
Right, and because from what I read, so in the scene is that they show up on Infant Island and it's just in the background that nobody ever acknowledges it. There's a full-size turtle, but it looks like it's a skeleton turtle, but it's moving. And apparently Honda or whoever saw an Italian documentary where there was like a skeleton of a turtle that was like bobbing and like in the wind. And he really liked that and he added it in there. And so the head moving was totally intentional. It was not a mistake.
That's so interesting.
And because of that, like it's now added to the official lore of these Godzilla movies where it's like now like they even add like a little section on it and like one of the Godzilla encyclopedias. So it's so funny that this one note character that never shows up again. Nobody ever mentions it, but it's there. It's in the Godzilla lore now.
It's almost like Star Wars, where just like the background trash can has a name. Like right. Anything has a plot.
But yeah, it's really funny doing that. I will say I'm glad that they decided to forego the blackface on these natives on the island. They decided to cover them in bright red paint, which I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I was really happy about that too when I watched it because they're kind of they're tan. They just look like tan Japanese people. They're not doing the full blackface thing. So good. I'm glad that it took them 10 or whatever. It took them a year. When did Mothra come out?
61.
61. Oh, okay. So it took a few years between releases, and I'm glad that they jumped away from that.
Well, yeah, and then King Kong versus Godzilla, which has very blackface in that one. That was 62. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
One thing. So I definitely want to talk about the English version of this movie. What did you personally? Because I know we watched both. What did you personally think of it?
I actually didn't. Once again, it was like Mothra, where I found the English version was fine. It was pretty serviceable. They added in an extra scene, and then I know some things are cut out. Some dialogue is pretty bad in the transfer. There's some questionable dialogue, especially with like. I always think it's weird that these voice actors have to put on an Asian accent and replace R's with L's. Like they think like they have to speak that way. But overall, for 60s dubbing, I think it was a pretty solid effort. I definitely didn't hate it. What about you?
This one is actually considered like the best English dub out of all the movies.
Gotcha.
And I agree. I mean, I think, it's not the best dubbing I've ever seen ever.
No.
But in terms of a Godzilla movie, I think it's up there. I think it's really well. I mean, they actually, in the commentary for the English version, they actually interviewed Peter Fernandez, which Peter Fernandez is also the voice of Speed Racer. And like I said, So he did a lot of dubbings for these movies and for other Japanese movies. So he was just they interviewed him for the commentary, and he actually did recreated one of the voices on there, and he does do an Asian accent.
Gotcha.
But he did say what they would have to do, like screenwriters would actually have to watch this movies like over and over, like thoroughly, to make sure that they ended the word with like a correct lip movement. So like if a word ended a certain way, they had to add that corresponding letter. So if they make like a B noise or like a D noise that ends, they have to make sure that the word that they write in the English version is a word that ends with a D.
Yeah, I always wondered about, because I mean, there's awful dubs where they don't even try, but this one definitely tried. And I actually thought about this, like, man, who's like sitting back and is like, okay, we have to match up these words, because they have to like form them in different ways, but get the same idea out. It's cool. I guess it's a oddball Hollywood job to have.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the dub actors as well, how they would get their lip movements timed correctly is that they would have sections of the movie playing on a loop on a projector in front of them. So they would have to watch the movies and make sure that they paid attention at all times and make sure that they ended their words like correctly at the same time and use the same like vocal inflections, and tried to make sure that they're, like I said, like the lip movements also matched up with what they were actually saying.
Yeah. And I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's hard work. That's tough work.
And it would take anywhere between 4 days to 3 weeks.
Holy crap. Especially if you're probably playing a main character with a lot of dialogue.
Absolutely.
Wow. Absolutely insane. Yeah. I mean, I think like if you watch the English version of this instead of the Japanese version, of course, watch the Japanese version if you have the chance. But if you had to only watch the English version, you're not missing much. I think you'd still get a pretty good experience out of it.
They don't show the guy's head being shot in the English one.
Fine by me.
But no, I totally agree. I think you're still getting the full experience of the movie. They don't cut out any of the good stuff.
No, I was gonna say the added scene isn't bad where Americans show up and they shoot at Godzilla and Godzilla kind of tanks the hits. That's not bad. It's barely even there, so it doesn't really change the movie very much.
Yeah, and this movie was distributed by API, which is American Pictures International. They released this movie into America, and kind of what was the philosophy in mind was doing these types of movies was because they realized that with TV growing a lot more, a lot of families and adults were staying home a lot more often. See, movies used to be a lot more catered to adults and families.
Yeah.
But now it's like going to the movies during this time was kind of like a teenager type of thing. Like, you go take a date to the movie. And so a lot more youth was seeing it. So they were trying to cater to a lot more unsophisticated tastes, a lot more stuff that wasn't so complicated. So they get a movie like this where it's just a lot of fun action sequences, and they can just pump that out there and show it to kids.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where the shift happened, right? I mean, there were B movies and silly movies before, but definitely in the 60s, late 50s, there was definitely a cultural shift where we were putting out a lot more fun stuff, a little more high concept, like movies, sci-fi genre based, and hey, I think it was for the better, because I mean, there's nothing wrong with a hard drama, but there's also nothing wrong with having a really good time.
No, and it's really good. I had a lot of fun watching it, despite my extreme bias, and we're going to start getting into stuff where I could start feeling like a true fan. I could start having somebody to root for, and I could feel happy at the end.
It's an underdog story. That's what it is. It's, starting out with some losses. Soon we're going to have some wins.
Yeah. I mean, but that is the kind of like the thing where he kind of starts out as like this big killer to Japan. And now all of a sudden he's, then he becomes like an anti-hero. And then he's like, hey, the kids love him. Everybody loves him in Japan now.
Yeah.
He kind of has that real evolution type of path. But one last couple other things I wanted to add in, which I couldn't find a spot in. This movie grossed about 3 million tickets in Japan versus the 11 million that was sold for King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I feel like King Kong versus Godzilla is like a really huge event. Where Mothra and God versus Godzilla, I mean, that's an event. I feel like 3 million tickets is nothing to scoff at, but maybe not as huge of a deal.
No, but it still was a modest success, enough of success in America and Japan where it determined that people still want to see Godzilla movies. So it did justify other movies to be greenlit.
Mm-hmm.
And other things too, like I said, Mothra was not seen as a big deal in America, a lot more famous in Japan. So much so, though, that even people who aren't fan of kaiju movies apparently really know the Mothra theme song a lot.
Really?
Like,
I mean, it's great.
Yeah, so I mean, like, there was some like in the video, they were saying like I have people in Japan, like they're not even fans of Godzilla, but they know Mothra's theme song, and I think that was kind of funny. Some other things to note. From Mothra, there was actually originally going to be a love plot between one of the fairies, one of the humans, which would have been really,
I want to be
weird.
for that. Yeah.
So, but thankfully that was cut out. Oh, and so like I said, I listened to this commentary a lot. It was funny. So there's one scene in this movie where something shows up in the water. It's not really determined what it is. You know the one I'm talking about, that metallic silver object.
Yeah.
It's never said what it is. It's just it is radioactive. And they actually ask, like the people from the commentary, they're talking about it. It's like, we're not told what it is. One guy says, yeah, I just assumed it to be one of Godzilla's scales that maybe got knocked off between King Kong and Godzilla, and it just kind of washed up the shore, or something, a piece of Godzilla. And then one of the commentary guys is like, oh, I thought maybe something stinky. Like saying it's like a piece
of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, all right.
I honestly didn't know what to think of it. I forgot about it at a certain point. They bring it up again later in the movie, but like, I just forgot about it. The main thing that makes sense is it's just something from Godzilla.
But it's not green though, so you don't know that it's something Godzilla. It's like a metallic silver looking thing. So
yeah. It's I don't know. Maybe something got cut from the script, but they kept it in the movie. I don't get it, because it doesn't even look like it came off the egg. It has nothing to do with the egg that they later discover. Who knows?
Who knows?
One of those weird things. Maybe I'll get a keychain of it one day.
Yeah, there you go, with the skeleton turtle. Keep it right on your when you go into your house. People can say like, "Oh, you're using my keys."
Yeah, yeah. It's got skeleton turtle and Godzilla's poop on it. Awesome.
There you go. Two more things. The villain of the movie, Kenji Sahara's character, he said that he studied real estate agents, and that's how he got that to get his personality.
Love it.
All right.
Damn, I didn't know. I'd understand. Oh, I studied car salesman, because those are like the more like people make fun of them the most. Not really real estate agents. Like they're not like evil.
He said he took it more of like their charismatic aspect of it. So
gotcha.
Maybe just a lot more outgoingness, but I don't know. If I was a real estate agent and they're like, "Oh yeah, I studied you to become to do this villain," I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, he met up with like one real estate agent. It's like based off of one person.
Yeah, and did you know that the people from Glengarry Glen Ross based their performance off of that movie?
Yeah, the director of that got everybody together. They watched Mothra versus Godzilla over and over again.
Yeah, David Mamet was a huge Godzilla fan.
Yeah. Wow, awesome. It all connects.
Last thing of note, do you know how they advertised this movie?
No, I don't. I need to hear it though.
It's not as crazy as before, where Mothra, where they actually would bring in live radioactive materials into the theater to show how a Geiger counter worked, or had these weird women show up to like a school playground. But
Mhm.
this one, they would actually go to like building wreckage sites or like buildings that are under construction or that just got demolished, and they would hang up this big sign that said Godzilla and the Thing fought here.
What? They fought here. You got to see
Right
it in the
here,
movie. That's so
right,
silly.
right here in middle America. Like,
Yeah.
they fought here.
Where it's not even like destroyed or anything.
Wow, can you believe it? They came all the way to Iowa.
Wow, wow, awesome. They wanted to check out the beautiful sights. And then they went to see the movie and it's just Japan. It's just
I
like,
know. Can you
okay.
imagine how disappointed they would be?
Right?
Uh,
Yeah, I would be. I would be so upset.
uh, but Nathan, on a personal note, I do have to ask you because I'm going to put your feet to the fire a little bit here, Nathan,
Yeah.
because I'm getting a strong sense here from you. Do you like Mothra more than you like Godzilla?
Oh, come on. You can't ask me something like that. Of course. Of course. I love Mothra. No, no.
Oh,
It's not like a winning edge or anything, but Mothra is such a cool design. I love Mothra. I mean, I love
am
Godzilla.
I just about to end the Zoom call, Nathan?
Yeah, I know. I know. But Godzilla is awesome in this. He does like look angry. So hard to pick, man. You're
I,
putting me on the spot, but I
all
do
right.
love
So when we
Mothra.
get to the end of the series, I'm going to have you rank the monsters too, because I cannot, I don't know if I could deal with you still saying you like King Kong more than you like Godzilla by the end of it. But
So here's the
Godzilla's going to
thing. I feel like a Godzilla ranking of the monsters, you can't put Godzilla on the list. Godzilla exists like in a league of his own. It's like the other cast that's like, I don't know.
it's just the same as any Marvel movie, Nathan. When you go watch the Avengers, you're gonna have your favorites for Avengers. Why wouldn't you have it for
Yeah.
Kaijus?
Yeah, and you're acting like I picked like what Hawkeye is my favorite Avenger.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Mothra is
Uh,
no Hawkeye. I can tell you that. Maybe
you know,
like uh,
Mothra's like a Thor, maybe I want to say.
a Thor. Okay, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Tony Stark is Godzilla.
Well, Tony Stark isn't the best Avenger, but we don't have to get into that.
Oh, we're gonna have to let's save it for our Avengers cast where we talk about nothing but Marvel movies.
When we do Marvel movies, what like that has to wait till like 2040. If we're still
Yeah,
going, then we have
we're
to.
still podcasting in 15 years, and we ran out of movies.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
then Marvel movies are dead. You know, it's like an old like weirdo thing.
yeah, can you believe they made these movies?
They made tons of money. What were people? What was wrong with people? You know.
Oh, but it's been a good time. I had a good time talking about it. Our next movie is going to be Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. So that'll be next in the franchise. But Nathan, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Well, next week is a pretty special week. It's another kind of, we're going to pick two of the same deal, and we're actually going to dig back into our old movies and pick movies with sequels and do the sequels. It's something that we kind of want to do. We've got a good amount. So for Tuesday, the sequel I'm going to pick is Eat My Dust 2, Ron's Revenge. It's a little hidden gem. I'm
Oh,
kidding. That was a
wow.
joke. Yeah, that was a
I
joke.
was getting excited for a second because
Is
I
there
like that movie. I
is
know
there
you
an Eat My
did.
Dust 2?
That pretty much Grand Theft Auto is, but anyway,
Oh,
that's a
that's right. Yeah,
different.
maybe one day, one day. But no, I'm gonna be picking one of our favorites that we have done before, and we talked about really just wanting to do the sequel, and that's Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold, the sequel to King Solomon's Mines, and it's streaming on Tubi. There we
There you go.
go.
Can't wait, Nathan. It's going to be fun to dig back into that, and we'll also be doing another sequel too. But one thing and two, we also have a Patreon, and right now we've been uploading some exclusive content on there. We wanted to make sure we were giving you guys something, for our generous fans that we're paying for. We want to make sure you get a little extra content. Not a ton on there right now, just some off the cuff conversations that Nathan and I have that basically he and I talk about whenever we're in a room together, but we have a good time and we would just want to make it feel like that you're part of our conversation too. Hopefully we'll put some more exclusive content on there, but for the time being, check us out on Patreon, Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. Also, feel free to email us at driveindoublefeaturepodcast@gmail.com if you've got any thoughts, suggestions. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DIDFpod. But until next time.
Until next time.